welcome to a special edition of the Grandstanders Live. I'm your host, Scott Kerman, and I'm joined by my usual cohorts, Russ Stevens on my left and Uncle Joe McLaughlin on my far right. Well, we have a special guest sitting in the grandstands tonight. He's a former club lacrosse player from Stanford University. Brookline residents may know him better as their U.S. representative for the 4th Congressional District since 2013. It is my honor and privilege to welcome to our show Congressman Joseph Kennedy III.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, Joe, this is a great opportunity to get to know you, the lighter side of Joseph Kennedy. Not going to be a lot of heavy questions here. So it's obviously a sports show, so we need to start from the beginning. Joe, tell us, as a kid, what sports did you play? Where was your interest?
I grew up playing sports. I got a twin brother. My parents had us starting very actively, so I remember t-ball when I was tiny, and then we would play football out in the backyard. My dad taught us a game called 3-2-1 where you had a quarterback, like you would a receiver and a defensive back, and you'd rotate through, and we would each keep score.
Oh, nice.
And so you could play in a we were living in Brighton at that time. We didn't have a big yard, but you could we'd have little games between the three of us almost every day. And then obviously growing up playing touch football and stuff with my family. Through elementary school and then high school, I played football, ice hockey, and lacrosse, and then was able to continue lacrosse in college. So I've always been, I was never necessarily a great athlete, but I always loved playing sports, and it's been a big part of me and my twin brother and growing up, and I'm still a big sports fan.
Which one's the better athlete?
Depends on the sport.
Lacrosse.
So, my brother was a really good lacrosse player.
He was.
So I was a goalie. I was. He was a defenseman. He was getting recruited to some pretty good lacrosse schools. Stanford had it was a club lacrosse team. It was the equivalent of essentially a good Division III team. So I could go in and
it's pretty competitive.
It was competitive. It was. It had a draw from students from across the country. I was able to start as a freshman and played my 4 years there. But and it kept you out of trouble. We played year long. We played teams all over the country. So we actually made it to the national championship. My sophomore year, we lost in the finals, and then my junior year, I unfortunately blew out my knee, but they went back to the semifinals. So team was actually pretty good. We played a couple Division III teams in the top 20 or so, and kept it pretty close.
That's pretty good for a club.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was a pretty good team.
So you played football in high school with your brother. You were co-captains?
Yeah, we were.
Yeah?
We were.
How competitive are you with your brother? Because I have twins, and I know they're so competitive. I mean, to this day, competing who gets to sit in what seat in the car. Yeah. So are you at to that level, or?
We've gotten better since we got a little bit older. He was quite a bit bigger than me when we were in particularly middle school and then high school, and he was a very good athlete. He played basketball in school. I played ice hockey. And we both played football together. He was a bit faster and a bit stronger, so for football that obviously translated pretty well. Right. But we're very close. We ended up going to school together. We were the captains of the lacrosse team together too, actually in college. So we have the sibling rivalry, and that will always be there, particularly I guess when it comes to athletics. But certainly now that neither of us are exactly playing on Sundays anymore. Not that we ever really were. We've gotten over it, I think.
Do you feel like it's toughened you up over the course of your life, mentally and physically, to have a twin brother and sort of have that sort of a force?
Look, I think I'm really close to my brother, and it's having him, obviously, growing up with him was, I can't imagine doing it, obviously, without him at this point. Playing sports, I think, was an extraordinarily valuable thing for both of us. You work hard in high school, you work hard trying to get through the academic side of things, but going out there playing sports, particularly the camaraderie, the friendship, our football team, we weren't great, but you never got off the field. We played, I think my senior year, we played, I think, most of the kids that actually played, it was about 13, 15 kids.
Oh, wow. So you played both ways.
Wow.
Yeah.
What
Bill
position in
Belichick
offense?
Bill Belichick would have loved him.
Yeah, right. Well, wait till you hear our record. We weren't very good. We won a couple of games. We didn't win very many of them, but you never came off the field. And it was, you were playing with your best friends, and you were out there through all of it together.
Right.
And it is, sports, I think, have been an extraordinarily valuable part of my education growing up. It's humbling when you do get, you get hit, you get lit up, you get the snot kicked out of you. You have to pick yourself back up and play the next game and play the next play. Somebody scores a goal on you as a goalie, you got to figure out a way to forget it, move on, get better, learn from it, direct the defense, trying to find ways to motivate your teammates, try to find ways to learn from them, not to get on them too much, but to really be somebody that is part of that team and tries to do their job and do their job well. And that aspect of sports, I think, has been incredibly valuable. It was for me, I think it was for my brother too. As you start to build those friendships and you start to grow up and you just understand that there's what goes on inside the classroom is obviously critically important, particularly as you're trying to take care of your education and move on into college. But you got a lot to learn outside the classroom too. And sports, I think, was an extraordinarily valuable piece of that.
It's a great balance.
Yeah, it is. And look, there's, you got, just like you got to do your homework for school. If you're trying to excel in athletics, you got to do your work there too. Whether that's
got to know the game plan,
right? Studying the game plan,
sure.
Going to the gym, doing all of that type of preparation. And particularly for, I think, as you get older, you realize a lot of those sports. Yes, obviously, a big piece of it is just physical ability and physical talent, that preparation. But a lot of it too is mental, right? How much did you study the game plan? How much do you know and interact with your team? As a goalie, being really trying to direct that defense, how much do you know? How quickly can you recognize the situation? How quickly can you direct folks to be where they need to be? How much have you studied their key players, the best shots that they're going to take? How do you anticipate where that's coming from? A lot of that is, yes, ability. A lot of that is just preparation and homework. And you see that cascade. Obviously, the Patriots are famous for it now. No team prepares better for that assignment that they have the week before, and you see that cascade through.
Yeah.
So you're the youngest of the twin, right?
Yes,
so
I am. Yes, I am.
Do you consider your brother the older brother? Seriously, no, right? Because in our dynamics, Max is the older brother to Lucas. It's 8 minutes.
8 minutes. You get it. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. I
was there timing it.
Yeah. He is my older brother, and I think we're twins. He says it's the greatest 8 minutes of his life. Right?
My kids say that.
All to himself.
Exactly right. But it's as I said, we're very, very close, and he was so we played football together and then lacrosse together. He made the varsity team as a freshman on that lacrosse team. He was one of the stars of our football team as well.
We have a picture right there.
Oh dear God! There you go.
You guys are.
So he was he was somebody that he won the best athlete award for our senior class as well in high school. So he's somebody that I think a lot of folks, particularly on athletics, look to as somebody that was a leader of a team. So he's obviously he's my older brother. Right?
So you go to Stanford and you room with Jared Collins.
Jason
Collins, who I look at as a former Celtic because that's how. Well, he didn't actually completely end his career. I think he went to the Wizards.
Yeah, he had one more year.
I know. I remember in college, for me, the basketball players. The big-time basketball players, they stayed in a special dormitory. They get all the life. How did you end up rooming with a Stanford basketball player?
So I was at school. We ended up, my freshman year, obviously, I think like everybody does, developed some great friendships and had a group that was trying to go into the housing draw together. So there were 6 or 7 of us. And we were all ended up in this one house, and then you were trying to do the roommate assignments. And I was slotted with one of my best friends, and we were really close friends. He was a really good guy, and we were close enough friends where we realized we really didn't want to live together. And
right.
And neither of us really wanted to do it, but it was kind of the way it teamed up. And then Jared and Jason happened to be living in that same house, and they didn't really want to live together either. So they kind of came over and said, "Hey, will you guys be willing to split?" And we looked at each other and went, "Yep." And so I went with Jason and knew him, obviously knew who he was, and knew him a little bit. Didn't know him all that well, and it was a pretty incredible experience. Obviously, I was going to my sophomore year there. We lived together for about 6 months. And he is an incredibly good guy. He was then, he still is today, obviously. And, you know, how many folks at that point, I probably was 19, 20 years old, would go to school, come back, be in my dorm room and turn on the TV and you're watching your roommate on Sports Center. Stanford at that point was the best basketball team in the country. He won the award that year for being the best big man in the country. They were one of the team's favorite to win the NCAA championship. He was a pretty private guy. He was very protective of his teammates. He was obviously literally and figuratively the big man on campus. Everybody knew who he was. Everybody kind of wanted a piece of him. And he was cognizant of that, but he never played to it. He was, and because of that, he commanded an awful lot of respect from people that knew him and his friends. He never got sucked into the fame aspect of it. He never got sucked into the fact that he was a very recognizable person on campus. He went about his business and he did it very, very well. And I think that's what's brought him the level of success that he's seen through a story, you know, a really long NBA career. And, you know, his decision to come out as the first active gay professional athlete, not surprising to me at all that he was the one that decided to do it, just because he has a tremendous sense of responsibility. And I think for somebody that has been going through those challenges as he did, to recognize if he could some way contribute to making sure that that next student, that next athlete, that road would be a little bit easier for him. And
you mentioned he went about his
confidence in himself too.
He did, and he does. But it comes from, I mean, look, he's obviously a historic athlete at this point. He's also just a really good guy. And so I knew him, yes, he was at one point on the one hand a star. I knew him well before he was who he was today. And he was just a really good guy, a conscientious roommate. He watches really bad television. You know.
Did you, we're, all of us are really huge fans of the Boston professional teams.
Oh, yeah.
Did you pick up any untoward allegiances while you were out there?
Oh, no.
You know, we forgive anything but the Lakers.
So you're a Boston sports fan?
Oh, through and through.
Okay.
Absolutely.
But you've lived a pretty good life now. You're 32 years old, right?
34.
34 years old.
Yeah.
Right, for the last 15 years.
We've got lots of championships.
Yeah, your youth is...
Yes, but remember, when I was growing up, Patriots were a bit of a different franchise.
Yes, they were.
I was in high school when we went to the Super Bowl the first time with Drew Bledsoe against Brett Favre and the Packers. Right. When I was kind of 8, 9, 10 years old, they were not exactly, you know, still staying in the old Foxborough Stadium concrete field.
Yeah.
So they were struggling. I grew up. The Celtics of the 80s were a little bit before I was of age, right there. I was kind of 5, 6 years old, so I remember a little bit of those teams. I was a huge hockey fan at that point. So Andy Moog, Ray Bork, Cam Neely,
Reggie Lemelin.
Reggie Lemelin, absolutely. Craig Janney, Adam Oates. Those teams I loved, and they had a really good string in the late 80s, early 90s.
Sure did,
so I was a huge hockey fan then. They fell on some hard times, obviously, later, and then started to get really good about 5, 6 years ago.
Right.
But all the way through, just been a huge Boston sports fan. I have had a pretty good run of it. I had the extraordinary misfortune of, after college, going off into the Peace Corps, and it was the year I went off into the Peace Corps. It happened to be the first time in 100 years the Red Sox won the Super Bowl.
So you were, it was it Dominican Republic?
So it was in the Dominican Republic.
Right.
So if there was one place that you
have been international.
if there was one place to be, that was a place to be.
But Pedro alone, right?
I remember sitting. You know, we had intermittent electricity, so I remember sitting with a shortwave radio tuned into. I couldn't get the Boston stations, but we could get whether it was Yes or the Yankees radio network.
Yeah.
So I was tuned in on a shortwave radio outside my little place I was living in a blackout, listening to.
Cut it out.
The guy from It was an old ESPN anchor that ended up taking over the Yankees.
Oh
radio
yeah,
broadcast.
the guy with the voice. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
and
Yeah,
had the
exactly.
beard.
Yeah.
Anyway, he ended up.
Charlie Steiner.
Yeah, Charlie
Yeah,
Steiner.
right,
That's
yeah.
right. So he was the voice of the Yankees
Yeah.
radio network, and I remember listening to, I want to say it was Game 5 or Game 6 in a blackout when Ortiz hit that huge home run off the
course.
Volvo sign.
Yeah.
In left center. So, and there's obviously speaking English, and I had a couple Dominicans around me trying to get me to translate a bit and then into Spanish, and then would start screaming when the Red Sox would
cut it
trying
out.
to say something. So, if you had to be somewhere, it was a great place to be.
Of course.
I went for Game
Oh,
7, went down to, made sure I found a TV that had a generator next to it so I could actually watch the game.
ESPN Deporte must go in there.
Yeah, definitely. You could get the broadcast. You needed to make sure you got a place that had electricity, so that was the hard part. So,
Amazing.
and then it was actually the year that Bartolo Colon won the Cy Young when I was there too.
Oh,
way
right,
back when
sure.
he was pitching
Had
for
that
the Angels.
crazy year, yeah.
Yeah, and he's from a little town in the Dominican Republic called Altamira, which is kind of northwestern part of the country, about 5 miles up the road from where I lived. And so he came back to the Dominican Republic after winning the Cy Young. He had donated the fire engine to the local community. He came back in literally basically sitting astride on the top of the fire engine, about a 5-mile-long caravan. Just a huge party.
Is that right?
Flying up to his old little town. And his father, or I think his family, somebody in his family owned it's called in Spanish a colmado, but a kind of little convenience store bar area. And he, from what I understand, bought drinks for the whole community that night.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So it was, it's an incredible baseball.
Yeah. These guys really are heroes in their country.
Yeah.
They are, and there's an amazing piece to it because you have this incredible talent that comes out of the Dominican
Right.
Republic, right? Whether that's Albert Pujols, or
Right.
Pedro Martinez, David Ortiz, Manny Ramirez, Sammy Sosa.
Right.
You've got this incredible list of some of those talented baseball players anywhere, right? The challenge to it is that it's still also a very poor country, and so for a lot of young people in the country, that is their pathway out, right? It's their pathway out of poverty. So you get this extraordinary dedication to baseball, but for those that make it, fantastic. But for every Alex Rodriguez,
Sure.
there's
Hundreds.
an awful lot of folks that don't quite become
Sure.
A-Rod. And he was born here. His parents are from the Dominican Republic, but they've got an awful lot of kids that show this tremendous promise, sign a contract for $10,000, $15,000, which will go a long way down there. Give it their all, doesn't quite work out, and
Of course.
then they've still got, they're 20, 21, 22 years old, and
Yeah.
we still got to find a pathway.
They have
for
a
their
long way to
future.
go in
Yeah.
life still.
So you have a great picture. We'll show it right now with Tom. Joe has a great picture with Tom Brady. I am so jealous of this picture right now. Look at that.
Oh, God.
I'm figuring when you're 106 years old, right, and your great grandkids come whipping this picture out, what are you going to tell them? Oh, yeah, that's just the guy that I played in the NFL with?
Yeah, exactly right.
Doesn't he look like what? He looks like what? He could be in the NFL, fifth receiver, right? A possession guy, right?
Right.
Julian Edelman.
Yeah, a
right
little
there.
Julian Edelman, play 4 or 5 years, get a pension. Tell me about this picture.
So I will say I've been I will definitely tell my grandkids or great grandkids that I did catch a touchdown pass from Tom Brady, so that will definitely be there. Tom has been extraordinarily generous to Best Buddies, which is a charity started by my cousin Anthony Shriver that creates mentorships and partnerships for kids and adults with developmental differences. And Tom Brady has been one of the lead champions of that cause now for years. So every year for the past now almost a decade or so, maybe a little bit longer, actually longer than that, we've had a big bicycle ride as a fundraiser from Boston down to Hyannisport. And a number of Patriots have co-chaired that ride for years. Tom's done it for about the past 10, 12 years and been the co-lead of that effort. Now, the day before that ride, he has hosts a football game. Been the past several years at Harvard Stadium, where it's going to be next door this year. He brings about 10, 15 Patriots with him and a number of members of the Best Buddies community that come out and play. And he throws touchdown passes to everybody, and they end up having a
great.
competition for the game. So
That's great.
I was able to. Been for the last couple of years. I've been the co-chair of the ride with Tom, and he's been exceedingly generous with his time. Takes a real interest in the members of the community there, the participants in the program, and has helped raise an awful lot of money. And is nice about. He is famous for always trying to find the open receiver regardless of talent. And so I've been grateful that I was able to sneak in one time and find a corner of the end zone that was wide open, and not even I dropped the ball.
Gave a kid a forearm shiver to get him out of the way.
Exactly right.
So, all right, I can't have a sports show right now at this current time, talk about Tom Brady and not mention Deflategate. So.
Yeah.
What's Joe Kennedy's view on...
As a fan.
As
Joe
a
Kennedy,
fan,
not as
yeah.
a potential. If this thing ends up in Congress somehow, right?
We don't know. Yeah, right.
Look, I think Tom was asked a number of questions about this a while ago, and he answered them. And there's an appeal process now that's going forward. I think you got to let that appeal process weigh out. We've heard what the NFL found. Tom is going to, I think, make some statements about that and is pushing forward on the appeal. And I think he deserves that right to make his case and to have that appeal heard. So I'm looking forward to seeing as that appeal process goes forward. And obviously, look, I'm a huge Patriots fan and a big Tom Brady fan. So I want to get him back out on the field as quickly as we possibly can.
I can't imagine them raising the banner without him there, right? Like that would be really hard.
But they'd have
to
super
see.
ratings. That's what the NFL would love.
He's the Patriots have been, I think, adopted really that mantra of making sure that they are a team, right? And from that first Super Bowl that they won, when they were introduced as a team going onto that field against the Rams, they are a team, and that team is no one is bigger than it, but every piece is essential. Having that celebration without Tom Brady there. Certainly seems like an odd thing to do.
Yeah.
Right.
It's weird for our show because we can say Brookline resident Tom Brady.
Absolutely. He's a constituent.
Brookline resident Bob Kraft. Yeah. So we're always in a weird situation here. So we can't talk football. We can't have Joseph Kennedy III here without talking about touch football. And obviously I grew up watching the Kennedys, in those summers, and those video clips playing touch football. Tell me the history that you have of playing touch football.
I think like a lot of families, we just grew up around a football, and you grew up playing football. And my dad's family's always been very active and loved sports and athletic and loved the game of football. He grew up around it. He played it. I think most of his brothers played it. We played it, and again, it was just something that from the earliest days I can remember, either going in my dad's office when he was running his company, or when he was in office and in Congress, or now, you go in his office and there's a football in there. There's a football in my office in Washington, D.C. He's always been, it's just always been around. And so when we would have family comes together over the course of the summer, every day there'd be some activity, and almost every day there'd be a football game. And you bring in not just family members, but friends, people, the neighbors, whoever's there, and did
you play with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
What?
Have you ever played touch football with him?
It would have been a while ago, but I'm sure we did at some point. Right?
Now, he's the whole offensive line, right?
There's that great scene in Wedding Crashers where there's just that maniac, right? The one guy who's taking this way too seriously and just starts to light up these guys. You don't have to name names, but have there been instances where someone, whether in the family or out of the family, has gotten into that game and said, okay, this guy's or woman has gone way too far.
Yeah, well, let's get the sister-in-law back.
There is. Why don't I just say sometimes things can get a bit competitive. I like to think it never quite gets that far, and I think it was an overdramatization. But nevertheless, it's a look. It's a big family. It's an incredible family.
Sure.
The reason why I think so many of us still do come back to the Cape is it's a place where family can be family.
Sure.
And part of that is going back and doing those things that we all have done growing up together. And part of that is also, enjoying those friendly games that can sometimes get a bit interesting.
Right, we've all had it.
Absolutely.
I grew up with a bunch of Italian cousins, and you get out there, and one of them would just sort of go, there's the forearm shiva.
So but I think things as now, and certainly for the past several years, there's been those games there's a lot of kids,
Sure.
And a lot of younger kids, and so
Right.
when you have a bunch of 6, 7, 8, 10, 12-year-olds, it's not quite as competitive as when everybody was
punches a
right,
little.
18 to 20.
That's great.
And look, we have big games of capture the flag. You have games of tag. You have games of soccer and baseball and softball and all the rest of it. But football certainly always will be there, and it's something that we always look forward to.
Well, for the final couple minutes of the show, if you're willing, we wanted to push the cameras back and just play a couple plays with my twins playing with you. Do you mind?
Let's
little
do
touch
it.
football? All right, so we're going to get the cameras back and we're going to play a little touch football with Congressman Joseph Kennedy III. Obviously, it's a dream when you're growing up in Massachusetts. You always look at the Kennedys, and when you speak touch football, we have a Kennedy. We're going to play a little touch football. All right, so the boys, my twins, Max and Lucas, with Joe. All right, you guys get the ball first.
Here
All right, you get Max. I'm going to take Lucas.
All righty.
Go.
That's one. All right.
Joe,
Now, I'm
make it
assuming
again.
you guys use a bigger football than that.
We do,
Right? Yeah,
but-
I got that at a yard sale for 50 cents.
Hey, well done.
We're
Well
just
done.
for this. Yeah, all right, here we go.
Go.
All right, Max.
Hey, grab. Good work.
Again, I want to thank Joseph. Grandstanders.
Thanks. No, pleasure. Thank you. Thanks.
Real
Nice catch.
pleasure.
That's our show for tonight. We'll see you next week on Thursday night. Have a great night.
That was awesome.